She screamed in the middle of the palace. Not behind closed doors and not in private, right there, in the corridor. While a royal guard walked past her, carrying her most expensive necklace. No explanation and no apology. Just a sealed order from the king. Deliver it to my sister. But why would Charles order a royal guard to seize her necklace? And give it to Anne? Before we reveal what was said that stopped the entire palace cold, hit that subscribe button, tap the bell icon, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because this wasn't about jewellery. It was about a line finally being drawn, and the one man who didn't step around it. She wore it once, just once, at the memorial service where grief was supposed to matter more than jewellery. The Hanoverian Flame, 3 blood-red rubies, a 44-carat orange diamond, Victorian platinum mount that hadn't been seen in public since before the war. The Queen never wore it, not in 70 years. It stayed in the vault, sealed, untouched, protected, until Camilla decided it was hers to claim. And when the king finally sent someone to take it back. When the royal guard walked into her private wing and opened case 7-, she didn't just protest, she screamed. Now, before we reveal what the guard said that made her go silent, make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because this wasn't about a necklace, it was about what happens when legacy gets confused with ownership, and the one man who refused to let her keep pretending. Dash, dash, dash. The envelope came before dawn. Sergeant Rhys Calder had just finished fastening the top button of his ceremonial coat when the East Watch captain appeared in the changing wing doorway. No knock, no greeting, just a raised hand holding a cream-coloured envelope with the royal crest pressed into wax. "Verbal order," the captain said quietly. "Straight from His Majesty. Execute immediately." Rhys took the envelope without speaking. 12 years in the Coldstream Guard had taught him to read the weight of silence. When a command bypassed the registry entirely, it wasn't about discretion, it was about control. He broke the seal with his thumb. The paper inside was thick, expensive, the kind Charles kept in his private study. The handwriting was unmistakable, small, precise, slanted slightly to the left. Escort retrieval, East Wing, jewellery case 7, 1 item. Recipient, Princess Royal. No signature, no timestamp. No mention of the Queen Consort. Just an instruction that felt less like policy and more like correction. Rhys folded the note carefully and slipped it into the breast pocket beneath his coat. Then he adjusted his gloves, checked the alignment of his belt, and turned toward the East Wing without a word. His boots struck the stone floor in steady rhythm, not rushed, not hesitant, just purposeful. The corridors at this hour were still dim, lit only by the pale glow of security lamps mounted along the archway. The air smelled faintly of furniture polish and old stone, the same scent Windsor had carried for centuries. It was colder down here, always had been, like the walls themselves held on to winter. He passed 2 aides, moving quickly in the opposite direction. Neither made eye contact. One of them, a woman in her 50s who'd worked palace logistics for decades, gave him a look that wasn't curiosity. It was pity. "Is it about the auction?" someone whispered from the gallery stairwell. Another voice hushed them instantly. Rhys didn't pause. He didn't ask. That wasn't his role. When he reached the vestibule entrance to the East Wing vault, the young corporal on duty straightened immediately. His eyes flicked to the clearance sigil pinned to Rhys's lapel, the one that overrode nearly every protocol in the building. "No one briefed us, sir," the corporal said quietly. "You weren't meant to be briefed." Rhys keyed in his access code and waited. The lock rotated with a low, mechanical groan, then disengaged with a soft, pneumatic hiss. The steel door swung inward, and cold air rolled out like breath from a tomb. He stepped inside. The room was smaller than most people imagined, just 4 walls, lined with glass cases, each one backlit and climate-controlled. Camilla's private collection had always been overstaged. Polished marble floors, mirror-backed displays, velvet pedestals that looked more like a boutique than a vault. But beneath the spotlights and the presentation, it still felt like what it was, a room full of things that didn't belong to her. As Rhys moved deeper inside, he noticed the gaps. Case 3. Empty. The placard still read, Empress Marie Fyodorovna Emerald Parure, 1890. Case 5. Bare except for a single earring left behind, its mate presumably separated in transit. He'd been in this vault twice before, both times during the Queen's lifetime. Back then, every case had been full, every piece accounted for. Now, it looked like a mouth with missing teeth. Jewellery case 7 stood along the far wall, nestled between two ornate sconces that hadn't been lit in months. Rhys crossed the floor without hesitation, his reflection trailing across the glass like a ghost. He pressed his clearance token to the biometric panel and entered the override code, an alphanumeric sequence assigned only to royal seizure operations. Very few guards were ever trusted to use it. Fewer still ever needed to. The lock disengaged. The case hissed as the temperature seal broke, and the glass lid rose slowly on hydraulic arms. Inside, resting on ivory velvet, was the necklace, the Hanoverian Flame. Even in the cold LED glow, it shimmered with an intensity that felt wrong in a vault. 3 centre-cut rubies arranged in a drop-tier pattern, each one the size of a thumbnail. And at the throat, a 44-carat blood-orange diamond that caught light like a warning. Camilla had worn it only once. Rhys remembered the moment clearly. The platinum memorial, just days after the Queen's funeral. The dress had been black, the shoulders bare, and the necklace resting on her collarbone like a statement no one had asked her to make. It had drawn attention, uncomfortable attention. Photographs that felt less like tribute and more like claim staking. Some said it was bold, others said it was a mistake. Today it was neither. Today it was evidence. Rhys reached in carefully and lifted the necklace by the neck loop, never touching the stones directly. The platinum was still faintly warm, like it had been handled recently. He laid it onto the velvet-lined retrieval tray he'd brought from the guard station, then closed the case with a soft click. The seal re-engaged. The glass fogged slightly as the humidity recalibrated. He turned to sign the conservation ledger, mounted on the wall beside the case. His pen scratched once across the logbook, and beside the retrieval line, he wrote a single word. Ordered. As he clipped the tag and adjusted the padded satchel, he noticed someone standing near the doorway. An aide. Senior staff, judging by the Windsor crest on her lapel. She was pale, mouth half open, watching everything like she'd just seen something she wasn't supposed to. She'll lose her mind, the aide said quietly. Not as a warning, as a prediction. Rhys didn't look up. She doesn't have to. He sealed the satchel, adjusted the strap across his chest and turned toward the exit. Whatever came next would come fast. And if the Queen Consort was already awake, then screaming wouldn't be far behind. She found him before he reached the stairwell. The doors had barely closed behind Rhys when her voice came slicing down the corridor like something sharp and unsheathed. That is mine! Sergeant Rhys Calder didn't stop walking. He kept his pace steady, measured, formal, as the sound of heels struck the marble floor behind him, gaining with each furious step. You don't touch private regalia without written clearance, Camilla's voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. This isn't some dusty tiara from the archives. That necklace was gifted to me. Rhys paused at the next archway, not out of hesitation, out of discipline. He adjusted his grip on the satchel and turned slowly. Camilla was already flushed. One hand clutched the wall for balance. The other gestured wildly toward the satchel hanging from his shoulder. Are you deaf, Sergeant? Or just expendable? He met her eyes calmly. His voice, when it came, was flat and unbothered. Acting under sealed order from His Majesty. Don't you dare hide behind protocol, she snapped. You think one old man's mood swing justifies theft? Rhys didn't blink. It's not theft. It's reassignment. Camilla scoffed so hard her voice cracked. That necklace was a royal wedding gift. It's mine. Mine. I've worn it in state photography. Once, Rhys said. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me. You wore it once. At the Platinum Memorial. Not before. Not since. Never catalogued. Never submitted for conservation clearance. He paused, letting the words settle. Which means It was never yours by royal inventory standards. You're quoting technicalities, she spat. No, he said quietly. I'm following a direct order. You may scream, ma'am, but it won't alter the ledger. Her voice dropped, sharper now. You wouldn't be doing this if I were a man. Rhys exhaled slowly through his nose. I wouldn't have to. That stopped her, not because she didn't understand, but because she did. The corridor behind them was beginning to fill. A footman slowed near the corner, unsure whether to pass. An aide from the royal kitchens hovered at the archway, holding a tray of unopened envelopes and watching, like she'd stumbled into a thunderstorm she couldn't outrun. Then one of the senior stewards, a man in his 60s who'd served under 3 monarchs, stepped forward from the gallery entrance. His voice was steady, measured, but loud enough to carry. The Hanoverian Flame was never registered under the consort's personal collection, he said. It remained under Crown Estate inventory. I processed the Queen's jewellery transfer myself after her passing. Camilla turned sharply. You're out of line. I'm stating record, ma'am. The steward didn't flinch. That necklace was archived under Royal Preservation Protocol. Not gifted, not transferred, archived. A murmur rippled through the small crowd. Another aide, younger, nervous, whispered something to the person beside her. Someone near the back shifted uncomfortably. Camilla's face flushed darker. She looked around at the gathering staff, then back at Rhys. Her voice dropped, sharper now. This is an attack, she hissed. You are undermining the Queen Consort. No, ma'am, Rhys said without heat. I'm enforcing the king. By taking my property? He adjusted the strap across his chest. His jaw tightened, just once. Then he spoke, slowly, clearly, with the kind of calm that felt more dangerous than shouting. With respect, ma'am, he paused, made sure she was looking him dead in the eyes. I'm retrieving what was never truly yours. Camilla opened her mouth, but for once found no words. Her jaw tensed, and the scream that finally came wasn't from indignation anymore. It was from fear, not of Rhys, but of whoever had finally dared to send him. She moved to block him, right there in the middle of the corridor, arms wide, back rigid, chin high, like she was daring him to physically push past her. Rhys stopped precisely 2 paces away. His posture remained upright. His expression didn't change. Step aside, ma'am, he said. Camilla's breath hitched with disbelief. You are not walking past me with that necklace. I don't care what Charles scribbled down behind closed doors. This is my wing, my vault, and that was my inheritance. The corridor behind them was no longer empty. A handful of aides had gathered near the vestibule entrance, silently watching. A steward holding a tablet pretended to read, eyes flicking up every few seconds. Somewhere down the marble stretch, soft footsteps halted, then reversed, as though the weight of the air itself had warned them away. You're overstepping, Camilla snapped, and when this reaches Parliament they won't care how ordered you were. Rhys tilted his head slightly. With respect, ma'am, this isn't a debate. It's enforcement. She stepped forward again, finger pointed at the satchel. That necklace is royal jewellery. There are rules, committees, procedures. Rhys's voice dropped a half octave. You bypassed them when you sold the Queen's sapphire suite. Camilla's eyes widened, just slightly, enough for the facade to flicker. That was cleared through internal channels, she barked. Then why did it show up in a Geneva auction house catalogue 6 weeks later? The corridor went still. One of the aides took a step back. Another looked at the floor. Camilla's voice turned brittle. You have no proof of that. Maison Laurent, Rue du Rhône. Lot 47 through 61. Rhys didn't blink. 14 pieces. Anonymous consignment. Sold for just under £2 million. Sterling. He paused. The Queen's private secretary flagged the catalogue when a London dealer recognised the Garrard maker's marks. Camilla opened her mouth, then closed it. The senior steward spoke again from behind them. Her Majesty's sapphires were never authorised for external sale. The committee wasn't consulted, the archivist wasn't notified, and the sale was completed before anyone in the household knew they were missing. That's a lie, Camilla whispered, but there was no strength behind it. It's public record, ma'am, the steward said quietly, logged by the auction house under Swiss transparency laws. Rhys took a breath, and the buyer was anonymous. But the payment cleared through a shell account, traced back to a holding company in your daughter's name. Silence. The weight of it pressed down on everyone standing in that corridor. You don't get to make those accusations, Camilla finally said, her voice shaking. I'm not, Rhys said. His Majesty did. I'm just carrying the box. She lunged, not to grab it, but to physically block the path again. Her voice, when it came, was trembling now, not from rage, from something worse. Realization. This is treason, she said. You are committing treason against the crown. Rhys didn't move. His voice, cool and even, sliced cleaner than any shout. No, ma'am. I'm protecting it. One of Camilla's personal aides, a woman in her 40s who'd been with her since the wedding, stepped forward then, voice shaking but defiant. The Queen Consort has every right to access family heirlooms, she said quickly. She was married to the king for 17 years before the coronation. She's earned. Earned? Rhys turned his gaze to her. Not hostile, just direct. The late Queen earned that necklace by wearing the crown for 70 years, by serving through war, scandal and loss, by never once selling off her mother's jewellery to fund a holiday home. The aide's face went white. She stepped back. Camilla's face twisted. Give it back, now! And that was when Rhys stepped forward. One pace. Deliberate. Controlled. The click of his heel against the marble echoed like a thunderclap in the silence. Step aside, he said again, louder now, not shouting, just clear, final. I've seen less panic in Helmand Province than in this hallway. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Camilla stood there, rage mounting, chest heaving, fingers trembling at her sides. But she didn't move. She couldn't. Because for all her titles, for all her volume, and for all the stones she'd draped across her collarbone like armour, she couldn't outrank the truth. And the guard wasn't here to argue. He was here to carry it. The hallway turned colder before he even arrived. Rhys hadn't moved. Camilla was still mid-breath, halfway through another tirade about inheritance rights and royal disgrace, when the soft creak of polished leather echoed down the marble stairs behind them. Every head turned. King Charles stood at the landing above. No fanfare, no escort. Just a single document folder under his arm, and a stillness in his expression that silenced even the walls. Camilla spun toward him like a woman drowning. Charles! He's taking the Hanoverian! Her voice cracked on the last syllable. Her tone, once commanding, now bled desperation. Charles didn't blink. Yes, he said, because it's the only one left. Silence. Camilla blinked. What? Charles descended the staircase slowly, each step deliberate, the way only someone who already knew how this would end could walk. His shoes barely made a sound, but the weight of them felt heavier than anything Rhys had carried all morning. You sold your mother-in-law's sapphire suite, he said coldly, behind the committee's back, without consultation, without inventory notice, a private courier, and a silent auction in Geneva. He reached the last step. His eyes didn't waver. Don't pretend this one means more. Camilla's mouth fell open. I was told the valuation exceeded expectations, she managed weakly. Charles's jaw tightened. You were told to stop. He lifted the folder slightly. I have 3 letters here. One from the Royal Collection Trust, one from the Lord Chamberlain, one from Princess Anne. He didn't open it. All of them requesting, politely, that you cease removing items from the archived inventory. Those pieces weren't being used. They weren't being sold, Charles interrupted, his voice dropping to something colder. My mother didn't wear the sapphires in her final years because arthritis made the clasp difficult. Not because she wanted them auctioned off to fund your daughter's property renovations. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Camilla's face went pale. That's not... The payment trail is documented. Charles's tone was surgical now. Swiss transparency laws require buyer disclosure after 18 months. Laura's shell company was named in February. He took one more step forward. You turned inheritance into inventory. Charles said, his tone flat and final. "You made legacy negotiable. I won't allow it to happen again." Rhys said nothing, just stood, shoulders square, satchel firm under his palm. He didn't need to defend himself. The king had done it for him. Charles looked to him at last. "Sergeant Calder." "Yes, sir." "Carry on. Deliver it to my sister." Camilla stepped forward, trembling with something uglier than rage now. "You coward! You're humiliating me." Charles didn't respond. Not to her, not to anyone. He turned his back, slowly, silently, and began walking away. Camilla screamed again. This time it wasn't performative. It was real, ugly, sharp, guttural, like someone realizing too late that the ground beneath them had already collapsed. Rhys adjusted his footing. He didn't look at her. He didn't flinch at her fury, because nothing she said could outrank what had just been spoken. And the only sound, louder than her screaming now, was the silence of a king who had stopped protecting her. She didn't move until Charles was out of sight. Only when the final rustle of his coat disappeared around the upper corridor did Camilla shift from the centre of the hallway. But it wasn't in surrender. It was in slow, reluctant recoil, like someone unsure whether they'd just lost control or been betrayed. Her hands dropped to her sides. Her shoulders sagged. She looked smaller now, not humbled, just exposed. Rhys didn't break stride. He walked past her without so much as a glance. The velvet-lined satchel cradled like it carried something far heavier than jewels. His boots landed softly against the marble, one step after the other, crisp, even, unbothered. Discipline, not drama. Camilla stayed frozen in place, eyes burning holes into his back. "This isn't over," she hissed under her breath. Rhys didn't slow. Behind him the staff parted as he passed, some stepping quickly out of his path, others just watching in silence. No one spoke. Not a single footman or aide moved to intercept. A few of them had probably handled the necklace during fittings. Some had likely helped her prepare it for photography. But no one, not a soul in the hall, was willing to stand between a king's order and the man carrying it out. Halfway down the stretch, a steward whispered just loud enough for Rhys to catch, "She'll come after his commission." Rhys didn't turn, didn't even shift his shoulders. "Let her," he said calmly. He didn't need applause. He didn't need agreement. And he certainly didn't need the approval of those who'd spent their careers orbiting power like it couldn't be questioned. Because in this moment, the guard didn't represent protocol. He represented something rarer, a correction. And that kind of walk didn't need to be loud. It just needed to be uninterrupted. The door to Princess Anne's study wasn't guarded. It didn't need to be. Sergeant Rhys Calder reached it just after the cathedral bells struck the quarter hour. He paused once at the threshold, not out of hesitation but respect, then rapped twice against the solid oak. "Enter," came the voice. He stepped inside. The room was warm and quiet, panelled in dark wood, lined with floor-to-ceiling bookcases. It held the weight of 100 years of statecraft without ever needing to brag about it. No aides, no noise. Just a single table at the far end, and the Princess Royal behind it, standing, not seated, already waiting. Anne didn't ask questions. She simply watched as Rhys crossed the room with the velvet-lined satchel and placed it gently on the blotter before her. He unlatched the clasps and opened the lid. The Hanoverian Flame caught the light instantly, rich crimson against the pale velvet. Even in silence, it still tried to command attention. Anne looked at it, then up at Rhys. Her voice was dry, even. Did she scream? Rhys didn't smile. Enough to wake the guard tower. Anne gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. Not satisfaction, just confirmation. She reached for the reassignment ledger at her right. The pen clicked softly in her grip as she wrote a single line beneath the entry number. No ceremony, no speech, just procedure. Then she signed it. Anne. No title, no flourish. She paused, pen still in hand, and glanced up at Rhys. "My mother wore this once," she said quietly, "at her engagement portrait sitting. Before the wedding, before the crown, when she was still just Elizabeth Anne's gaze returned to the necklace." She told me it made her feel like she was borrowing someone else's life, so she never wore it again. Rhys said nothing, just listened. She kept it because it reminded her of what she'd been before duty. Anne closed the ledger. And she left instructions that it should come to me, not as jewellery, but as proof that we were all someone else once. She looked at him then, fully. Camilla never understood that. To her, it was just stones. Rhys watched as she closed the satchel, relatched the box and placed it into an unmarked drawer behind her. She didn't try it on, didn't admire it. She didn't even touch the diamonds directly. When she turned back, her tone had shifted just slightly, something like gratitude wearing a uniform. "Thank you, Sergeant." Rhys gave a short nod. "You'll need a guard to seal the registry in the morning. I'll report at first light." Anne paused, then nodded once. That was enough. They didn't speak further. They didn't need to, because the necklace wasn't the real transfer. What had been handed over in that room was the weight of judgment. And Princess Anne carried it without flinching. The West Corridor had always been Rhys Calder's preferred route. It was quieter, wider, and less ceremonial, used more by staff than dignitaries. The kind of hallway where no one posed, no one performed, and nothing was said unless it needed saying. That was exactly what he needed now. He passed a junior guard near the gallery arch, barely 20, eyes wide, standing a little too straight as Rhys approached. "Sir," the boy blurted, Did she hit you?" Rhys didn't slow, just with volume. The young guard flushed and looked away, then called after him softly, "My grandmother served Queen Elizabeth. In the household staff, 34 years. He paused. "She would have been proud of what you did today, sir." Rhys stopped. Just for a moment, didn't turn around, but his shoulders straightened slightly, and when he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. "Then she raised you right." He walked on, boots still steady, shoulders still squared, mind already clearing itself of the noise from earlier. The king had spoken. The necklace had been reassigned. His part was done. But as he rounded the final corner toward the barracks wing, he saw her again. Camilla, alone now. No aides, no shadow staff, just a single figure seated on the window bench, beneath one of the tall arched panes overlooking the garden. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, her expression unreadable, but not soft, not broken, just bitter. She turned her head as Rhys passed. "You think this makes you noble?" she said, voice low but cutting. He stopped, not out of hesitation, out of instinct. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time that day. "No, ma'am," he said calmly. "Just a guard." She scoffed, shifting her weight. "You're all just uniforms and instructions." Rhys nodded once. "Exactly. That's why we don't scream when we lose." She didn't reply, and Rhys didn't wait. He turned and walked on, the echo of his boots trailing behind him like punctuation. Because some reversals didn't require applause, only silence. That night, long after the staff had retired and the castle settled into its ancient, creaking rhythm, Rhys returned to the vault. He didn't announce himself, didn't log the entry. He simply used his access code, slipped inside, and stood before jewellery case 7, where the empty velvet cushion now rested. The lighting was dim, set to night mode, a soft amber glow that barely illuminated the glass. He approached slowly, boots silent on the stone floor, and stopped just short of the case. For a long moment he simply looked at it, the space where the necklace had been, the indent still visible in the fabric, like a ghost of what had rested there for years. Then he noticed it. On the floor of the display case, just beneath where the necklace had lain, something small and folded had fallen. He keyed open the environmental seal, carefully, deliberately, and reached inside. His fingers closed around a small square of cream-coloured paper. He unfolded it slowly. It was a handwritten note, old ink, faded at the edges. The handwriting was unmistakable, slanted, elegant, meticulous. "For Anne, when she's ready, not before." It was signed simply, E.R. Rhys stood there for a long time, the note resting in his palm, feeling the weight of what he'd protected without even knowing it was there. This wasn't just about a necklace. It was about every small, personal intention the Queen had left behind. Things that couldn't be replaced, couldn't be borrowed, couldn't be claimed by anyone who simply wanted them. He folded the note carefully and placed it back inside the case, tucking it gently into the corner where it wouldn't be disturbed again. Then he resealed the glass, checked the humidity one last time and stepped back. The faint hum of the environmental controls resumed. The empty case stood silent once more, holding its secrets close. Rhys turned and left the chamber, the Queen's words still echoing in his memory. When she's ready, not before, because some things don't get settled with policy. Some things settle when the people meant to protect them finally remember what they were standing in front of. And this time, they had. Should Queen Camilla have been allowed to keep it, or did King Charles finally get it right? Was the Royal Guard just following orders, or standing for something deeper? If you believe memory isn't for sale, hit that like button. Subscribe with the bell icon turned on. Share this with someone who still remembers the late Queen's dignity. And we'll see you tomorrow, same time, right here.